Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What? Today we've got Russell Henderson on, and he's an architect. Hi, Russell.
Hi, how you doing, Daniel?
Yeah, really good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. I'm really good.
Amazing. Should we jump straight in, Russell? Do you want to tell everyone a bit about what you do?
So I'm architect, registered in the UK, but I currently work in Tanzania, which I'm British, but I moved here I've been here about 8 years now. And I left the UK actually about 13 years ago. So I've
Oh,
been working abroad ever since. Um, so I design. I've been mostly designing all sorts of buildings really in Tanzania for the last few years. Shopping malls, apartment towers, office towers, um, a factory, uh, sh- hotels,
wow.
villas. So just all sorts of things really.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how comes you ended up in architecture? Was it always a passion for you, or where did the sort of spark or decision to go into it come from?
I think I kind of happened. I remember at school, I was doing like designing. I think GCSEs. Towards the end of GCSEs at school, you have to choose to do A levels, and
Mm,
I had one of the subjects at GCSEs was design and communication, and my teacher said I had a talent for design, so it kind of so okay, I'll do that A level as well. So I went. So I did, then I ended up doing design and communication, computers and maths on A level, and then I kind of it wasn't like I wasn't like, oh yeah, I always want to be an architect. It kind of just you kind of look at all the subjects and you think, I thought I nearly went into computers, but I figured it's quite like ironic, really. I figured like in my spare time, I was on the computer, playing games and stuff at
mm.
that time. But I figured like I don't want to be working on the computer all the time and then coming home and I'll be on the computer anyway. So I thought I'd do something slightly different. And like a lot of my friends were going into computers and stuff. So I thought I'd do something slightly different. So I chose architecture in the end.
Mm.
And around that time, I think when I was 16, my parents we all went on holiday to New York, and you see all the skyscrapers and everything, so that got me interested in a bit more. And then I went to the university to for the interview and stuff, and it got me interested seeing all these amazing drawings and everything. And yeah, so I took it. That's how I kind of got into it. And I liked drawing on the I was always good at drawing.
Mm.
And I liked drawing on the computer as well. So that was another thing as well.
Is there sort of a
Yeah.
particular architectural style that you really like, or is it you just sort of have your own style that you go for?
I don't really like I don't get into styles that much because I always say like architecture is kind of a language, not a style.
Okay.
You design something for the location and the surroundings and things like that. It's not really I don't think. Yeah, I suppose there is styles that influence you, but I don't really have a favorite style because it depends on a lot of things, the area and stuff like that, really.
Being an architect, I know you can go. It's quite a long course to be an architect. You can sort of continue working at university, or you can come out after like 3 years and go into a firm fairly easily. How far did you take your education in architecture?
Yeah, I went all the way because you can't. Well, you actually can't. You're not allowed to call yourself. It's illegal to call yourself an architect unless you've gone all the way and you got the license and everything. So if you do 3 years, you're not allowed. It's like against the law to. It's just that word, architect. It's
Yeah,
not even engine. This is in the UK and most other countries. Like even in the UK, like civil engineer and stuff, they don't even have that privilege. The name like civil engineer is not um, like a law to use it, but architect is it. There's like an Architect Act in the UK, and if anyone's using the name architect and they're not registered on the architecture board, architects board, then it's kind of illegal to call yourself that and promote yourself as one. So 7 years is minimum. So it's like, oh god, so it's 3 years full-time study, then you have to work at least 1 year, then you have to go back to study for another 2 years full-time, and then you got to work for at least another year, and then you have to take exams and stuff. So it's 5 years full-time study, and then minimum 2 years practical training, which is like supervised work experience.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's 7 years if you do it minimum, but it took me about 10 years to do all that.
So how did you, you got your degree, how did you get your start in architecture? How did you approach a firm, and how did it go?
Yeah, I worked for architecture practitioners. So you get a job at an architect practice, really. That's what most people do. You're not really, I don't think many people start their own firm until years later when they got a lot of experience. So I worked for some large firms. When you just graduate, you want to work for the famous firms. So I worked in Leeds, and I worked in Cambridge, stuff like that. Last few years lived in the UK. That's Leeds. I worked for a few practices. But recently, I worked in Thailand for a bit, a large practice. Then Australia, I worked there, a bunch of practices. But then I came to Tanzania. Now I work for a contractor, and it's slightly different, and I kind of like it. You're getting more involved. These design firms, they're very arty, and they're very design orientated. But you kind of with a construction firm, and here as well, so it's a hell of a lot quicker, and you get things done quicker, and it's a bit more practical, which I kind of like, and it's a bit more money as well working for a contractor. It's quite a lot of architects, they complain a lot that you don't actually get as much money. You study the same amount of time as a doctor or a lawyer or something, but you don't get half as much money as those kinds of professions. And that's one of the negatives about being an architect. The money's not that great, but you can, if you look around and stuff, there are ways,
You said you traveled, went to practice in multiple different countries. Was it quite a difference going from country to country? Was there, I assume the regulations differed quite drastically, or not maybe drastically, but there's certainly, I assume, different things you had to pick up.
Yeah, it's like where I work now, there isn't any regulations really. The country doesn't so well, I think there are, but not really many really. So I kind of I have to use the British ones because there's no other ones to go by really. That's like some of the videos I do on social media about stuff like that, and it's quite challenging. And it's because you got to, when you're in a country, you got to check the local codes because they do vary a little bit. I mean, Australia was very similar to the UK, but each country, most Western countries, but developing countries, they're not quite grasped. They haven't got a local code yet. So you got to go by something. It's for safety, and these codes, they're building regs, they're called, and they're for health and safety in and around buildings. So they're quite important. And if you don't know them, a lot of people, they just go on Google and they just find whatever. And there's so much, as you know, there's so much stuff and so much crap on Google. You got to find the right. One thing, it might not be correct, it could be some student just posting a drawing, you don't know. So you have to go to the source in the country you're at, really.
So what's an average day like for an architect?
It's project based. So it depends what projects you're working on at that time. I think it's like, and these projects, they go on for years. And some of them, the construction takes years, like 4 years sometimes, or a couple of years at least, for the construction. And then sometimes 6 months before that, you're working on it as well. So like some days you might go in, I might go into the office and just work on my computer for just weeks on end. Or sometimes when I got a project on site, I'll be going to site every week. I had one project, one of the first couple of years I worked here. First year I worked here was like, I was just mostly in the office designing and stuff. And then second year, stuff started going on site. So I was going on site a hell of a lot, like once a week. So most of the time it's you're on your computer drawing. That's what architects do, really. You draw, and people build from those drawings. But you do a lot of coordination as well with engineers. So you have to coordinate all the other stuff that goes in the building, like mechanical, electrical, and plumbing equipment, pipes, vents, all that stuff. You got to make sure that fits in your architectural design. Like, for instance, whether it fits in, like your ducts and stuff fit in the ceiling. So you got to make sure the floor-to-floor height of the building is enough to fit the ducts in the ceiling, and you got to make sure you put the space, like pipes in the room, like vertical pipes for the toilets and things. If you don't put them in on your plan, then later on it'll be a disaster. They'll start constructing it and go, oh, we forgot the pipe, and then they have to start changing things like a bit late. And if they start changing things late, it has other effects as well, if you know what I mean. So it's mostly drawing, coordinating with other engineers, and going to site, I think.
So you said you can't obviously be an architect without doing all of that education, and I'm pretty sure that's dictated by Reba. Is Reba? I know it's Institute for British Architects, but obviously having that, does that give you quite a authority to go to these other countries? Like, could an American architect go to other countries as easy as a British architect?
You have that name behind you. If you're, there's two. It did help me. There's two. There's the Architects Registration Board, which is where you register. Like, it's a bit like a license. That's where the list of architects are. That's called ARB. And then you get RIBA. Now, you don't have to join RIBA. That's optional. But to be an architect, you have to join the ARB in the UK, Architects Registration Board. That allows you to call yourself an architect, and you have to abide by these codes and stuff. But then RIBA they don't actually do that much. They kind of RIBA, they kind of promote architecture, kind of, and the British architecture. Some people say it's kind of like a gentleman's club, but like anyway. But if you join RIBA after you become, so you're an architect by the ARB, and then you join RIBA, and you're allowed to call yourself a chartered architect if you join the RIBA, and you're allowed to put RIBA after your name as well. So it did help me. I thought it did help me, because like when I was abroad, handed my CVs in, I put RIBA at the top, and like everyone recognizes it. So I think it does help. But I tell you what, it doesn't help you though. It doesn't help you because I was saying about you have to register as an architect in the UK to call yourself an architect. That happened. They have the same thing in all these other countries. A similar thing. The US, Australia, even Tanzania as well, where I live. So when I went to Australia, when I went to Thailand, I wasn't allowed to call myself an architect because I wasn't registered in that country. So when I went to Australia as well, I wasn't allowed to call myself an architect. So you call yourself like an architectural assistant or a designer or something like that. So it's just that word you're not allowed to use. But then I tried to register in Australia, I went through all this big process. Like I told them I was like registered in the UK. I told them RIBA and all that stuff. They wouldn't let me register there as an architect. So I had to there's all these ways I had to submit all my education, all this stuff. Then I had to have an interview. Yeah, then I had to have an interview. I had to send like, it's a very complicated process. But at the end of it, they didn't even let me register. I had an interview with the Australian architects, and they said no. And then I made an appeal, and then I had to submit loads of. I made an appeal saying, how can you? Because they analysed my education in the UK, and they said it wasn't good enough. And I said, how can you say that?
Yeah,
how can you say that? And then I made an appeal, and I left after that.
Obviously, the way the world's going is quite a big net zero and lowering our carbon footprint, etc., etc. And obviously, construction is quite a big, heavy hitter of carbon emissions. As an architect, being at the very beginning of majority of these processes, how are you guys within the industry trying to affect the carbon emission of the construction industry?
You can get a building rated, like it's called, there's different rating systems for environmentally friendly building. There's one in the UK, it's called BREEAM, building rating something. So when you design a building, they analyze it, how much carbon emissions it's producing, how much energy it's using, like the carbon footprint, those things, like how much electricity it uses for heating, air conditioning, things like that. So when you design it environmentally friendly, compared to a standard building. So, and then when it gets rated, you kind of get a gold or a bronze or something like that. So that's classed as having a sustainable green building if you do that. So so I did my first project in Tanzania. I got it LEED rated, which is a rating system. It's like it's the most used green building rating system in the world. It's in the US. It's called Leadership in Energy Environmental Design. So we rated the design I did. We designed it so it's green, and it got gold rating. It was the first LEED rated building in Tanzania. So
wow.
I finished. Yeah. And then I finished another one recently in Zambia, which was the first LEED gold rated building in Zambia. So yes, I've had lucky doing those projects.
What do you think is probably one or two personality traits that you think architects need to have? I guess, when you're dealing with multiple sort of construction practices, you have to have a skill set to be able to manage people. But what kind of personality traits do you see being a benefit?
You have to be confident, and there's a line between confidence and arrogance, and sometimes it's difficult to distinguish, but you got to be confident. You have to be creative as well, and you have to be a bit of a salesperson as well. I was just doing a video the other day, and I was thinking some of the best architects in the world, they're quite good salespeople. They're good at talking, persuading how good their building is. So I think those things are quite important.
And what would be some of the biggest negatives you've discovered of this industry?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like the education is too long. It's this thing though as well. When you're 18, you don't really know what you want to do, I don't think. And going into something that long without knowing for sure, you have to really know what you're getting into. So it's the length of the study to be an architect, and it's the money as well. You don't get paid as much. I think they're the main things. And there's another one, is that it's you get architects that don't actually design many buildings as well. You don't actually do much design work. A lot of it is it's like out of all like your daily job, it's like less than 5% of your job is design work. The rest is kind of like I was saying before, coordinating other stuff or making the project work. You kind of you might do a plan and a drawing what the building looks like, but then after that it's like you're refining it for like maybe years afterwards. The design goes on for a long time. It's not just, you don't just design a building in a couple of weeks or a couple of months and that's it. You're constantly refining it. Like you might do a design, like it's all done in stages. So you do the design and then a contractor might come and like he might say he might pick up loads of mistakes or say, oh, it should be done like that, or and you might realize you might discover loads of other things and then you refine it, and then the client might come along and say, oh, we need to add this. So sometimes it just goes on and on. It's not so much design, it's kind of developing and refining a lot. So you've got to be aware of that. It's not just like drawing a pretty design and that's it. And a lot of it's technical as well. You spend like the design part of it at the beginning, the plans and the pretty pictures. That's just the stage at the beginning. But most of the time and the work after that is construction stuff, making it work, and how materials are put together, those kind of things. So you don't and at university you just do mostly the design part, and you think a lot of students are complaining that the education system doesn't prepare them as much for the real world, because it's mostly design stuff. You have to learn a lot when you start working again. When you start working, then you're learning again.
And what for you would be the number one positive of being an architect?
I think, to actually create something that's actually there in real life, because everything's digital now, and to actually create something in real life that you can actually see and walk around, I think that's the joy of it. I think even though we were practically you're creating it digitally first, but it comes out as a real thing in the end, and everything's going to digital now, and like it's nice. And I think that's one of the reasons why, at the beginning I was saying about the computer thing. I didn't do computers because I'll be on the computer in my spare time. It's nice to create something in the real world. I think that's the best thing, I think.
And obviously we'd like to talk about your recent, well, I don't know if it's recent, but your social media videos, which are brilliant, I must say. I really find them, they're really interesting and quite fun. So how did that all come about, and why do you decide to do that?
Yeah, I've always been, my other passion was like film. I watched a lot of movies. I've always watched movies and stuff when I was younger, and that's something I could have gone into, but I never really thought about it at that age. When you get older, you start looking at what other passions you have, and they seem to pop up, and you go, oh, yeah, that's another passion I never did. And that's, I bought a drone and I bought a camera and started playing around. And then I started getting really into Casey Neistat,
Yes, the YouTuber. Yeah,
like,
that looks like a great life, doesn't it? Going and making videos, and yeah, really cool.
Yeah, because he was like quite cinematic the way he films his vlogs and everything.
Yeah.
And it was only I think it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I only discovered him, because my internet was pretty bad here in Tanzania. I only started to get like could watch decent YouTube like maybe 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years ago here. And
you have a better signal than some people that we interview in the UK. It's a better audio quality. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's gone straight to. We didn't have land. There's no landlines here. It just went straight to mobile. Skip that generation.
Yeah.
So I discovered Casey Neistat pretty late, only like 4 years ago, and I was like glued to him like for 6 months. I was like watching everything. I was like, I never seen anything like it. So then I started. I went on holiday and I just started doing travel vlogs, and then I thought and then TikTok came along. Was it about nearly 2 years ago? 2 years ago, I think not last January, the January before. I started. I did YouTube for a year, like travel vlogs and stuff.
Yeah.
So I got some camera skills and vlogging skills, and then I started TikTok like nearly 2 years ago, and I started doing that, and I was thinking, I need to do like some kind of niche, because what can I do? Like my YouTube thing was travel, but I wanted to do something. And then I started watching Gary V. You know Gary V?
Yeah, no, Gary V. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was always and then I was watching him a lot towards the end, and then he was giving me ideas. Give information and just give stuff for free. And I was thinking, all this stuff I've learned at university, everything I've learned, right? I'll just tell everyone. I'm fed up with being a nobody in Tanzania. I want to. So you watch more. Gary V says, put yourself out there and stuff. And so I just started leaving parts of my brain, even little things I learn, or stuff I learned at university, stuff I learned at work. So I just try and give, some information. So it's just
that is good, because there's I liked the little one on the doorway. There's little bits you just wouldn't expect about the architecture world that nobody really knows about, but they kind of make sense when you hear them. But for you, what would be maybe a skill you would wish you could have learned before becoming an architect, or maybe a skill that you would advise up and coming architects to learn that maybe they wouldn't really be taught at university?
A lot of students, software is important, but it's students get, even when I was a student, you get obsessed with software a bit too much. So I wouldn't get too obsessed with it, because software changes a lot. That's a difficult question. Maybe I think show your opinions a lot. Don't be afraid to tell people what you think. If you like something, like a design or something, a lot of it's about opinions, but you'll learn if you need to. I think talk to people at work about your design and what you're doing. Don't hold it in. A lot of people try to keep their projects to themselves, especially at work. You learn more by talking to people and learn more about you don't really. We had all these lessons at university about plumbing, electrical, mechanical, but it's difficult to learn that we did all these construction lectures at uni, but it's very difficult to learn. You have to go in the real world and see it on site and stuff, but it's very difficult to get site experience in the UK. They'll just leave you in the office, and it's very difficult to take people to take you on site. So if you can get practical experience on site and learn how a building is put together, I think that's one thing you don't learn at university. It's hands-on experience on a construction site, that kind of thing.
Yeah, certainly.
But you need to get that, but it's obviously very difficult to get that in the UK. That's the thing.
Particularly with the regulations in the UK. But for you, would you still go into this industry knowing everything that you know now?
I wouldn't say yes. Or I wouldn't say no. I'd probably say something in between.
Fair enough.
Maybe, I don't know. I'd probably take a second thought. That's for sure. But yeah, I'm not sure. But you don't know. You get ups and downs. You know, some days are good, some days are bad. You know.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat, Russell. It's been really interesting hearing about all your career, and I love your videos. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you, Daniel, very much. It's nice to be here.
Russell, where can people find your Instagram and what you're up to?
Instagram, everything's Architect Russell. So just type in that anywhere and you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.